Hi there. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us. I wanted to kind of ask about how series like this kind of utilize genre and kind of by taking us into a parallel world to our own, allow us maybe to talk about issues that are very relevant to our current world, but through a different medium. And maybe that can, create a safe space to have dialogue about, topics that are very thorny. If you think of, Handmaid's Tale and how we could then use that to talk about, agency women have over their bodies. And as you're talking there, how this show can talk about people who have power, who have voice. So how does genre and working in these stories help us talk about contemporary issues?
I've been really fortunate to work on a number of genre shows that were also political in nature as well as entertaining. Jessica Jones was about consent, for example. You know, and I think what's exciting about using genre to tell sort of deeper, more emotional or political stories is that you are putting the entertainment first. You are inviting people into a world of wish fulfillment and fantasy. And just that allows us maybe to take the pressure off of talking about things that you don't want your television show to necessarily feel educational or it's talking down to you or trying to teach you something. You're there to have a good time. But if our stories can make you look at the world slightly differently than you would have otherwise, then we've all done something truly miraculous. I'm a huge believer that stories and the way we tell them can change the world. As a personal note, I grew up with a gay parent. My father was gay, and in the 90s, when he died of AIDS, that whole period of time, people were afraid to come into his house. People were afraid to walk up to him on the street. And I watched how early shows like Roseanne and Ellen, and these shows started talking about gay issues. They started talking about AIDS. And I watched the world around my father and around me as a result slowly shift and change. And we're not perfect. And there's still so much, unfortunately, that we're still pushing against. But I actually feel that if you make something entertaining, but you also make it emotionally challenging and bold and revelatory and empathetic, that it can have a great, great impact. And with that comes a great responsibility to think about what we're saying and why we're saying it.
Well, again, I guess you were saying it's hard, like not being on the set all at the same time. But do you have some favorite moments? And I just wanted to say one thing about Toni Collette as well, who are just like one of those exciting actresses I've always followed her career. She's always doing fascinating things. And what do you think it is about her that just really compels audiences?
Oof. I mean, I just think she's unabashedly powerful. That's why she's perfect casting for this show. She lives in her strength. She is not ashamed of it. She owns it. And it's so inspiring to be in a room with someone like that, let alone get to watch them play all of these different characters. She just owns that sense of confidence and power and strength.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gutted that I didn't get to do any scenes with her.
The same.
So fingers crossed we get a series 2 and then we can maybe,
Exactly.
we can maybe get in the same room as her. But I think I had just watched Little Miss Sunshine and then found out that she was going to be like in the show, and I was just so excited because I agree with you. I'm such a huge fan of her, and I've seen a couple of the episodes and I just think that she just smashes it as Margot.
I think she's one of those actresses that, their work speak for them enough and everything. And I don't feel, big enough even to say anything about her work. So, but my favorite stuff from the set, I think it's always the scenes with kids and animals, because you never know what will happen. And in this one, I had 3 dogs and a pony. So that was a lot of fun, and not a single scene went the way we planned. So there was a scene where I walk into the president meeting with the pony. So as we were standing and preparing for, go, I was having like a little dress with like artificial feathers. And Whiskey, that was Pony's name. I don't know if he thought it's a hey or whatever, but he just kept like, So I was like in high heels like this, like trying to keep the pony like this, not to eat the dress so we can do the shoot. So it was a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
A lot of fun.
So good. I thought it was amazing. I read the book when I was auditioning, and I fell in love with it. I think that it's visionary and incredible, and it's just full of complex, three-dimensional characters for women. And Roxy in particular, she's a real character, and she does questionable things, but you can't help but root for her because, well, for many reasons, but she has like a real sense of humour about her. And I think she's full of like quite a lot of bravado, but there's also like a real vulnerability there as well. And I think, it was amazing working with Eddie Marsan, who plays my dad, Bernie Monk, in it. Yeah. And I feel like he brought a lot of, I think Roxy models herself a lot on her dad. So I watched how, Bernie was acting and kind of copied him and imitated him, because I think that Roxy is doing that to try and gain his respect. And yeah.
I think having an all-female writers' room allowed us to maybe talk about certain things that haven't been acceptable for us to talk about in mixed company. It created a safe space to be able to share ideas that we might have been more self-conscious of. So I do think that it created a sisterhood and a camaraderie and an emotional depth to some of the female characters that might not have been there otherwise.
Yeah, I felt that it meant that we kind of had a shorthand between me and the director, because the directors, because we all know what it's like to feel afraid and to we've all experienced the casual misogyny that the characters have, and so we didn't have to over-explain that too much. And I think that it brought like a real like authenticity and detail to the story as well.
For me, I don't have a difference between men and women. A good writer is a good writer. A good director is a good director. A good actor is a good actor. But we are from different planets. We have to be realistic. So we need each other. We understand each other, but up to a certain level. So I think having, all the women behind the camera, behind the pen, I mean, they know how we feel. So it's the same language, in short.
Ooh, good question.
Well, that was pretty divided. Actually, the two of us, we met, I think 2 months ago when we were doing stills for the show and for the press, because, I never saw her on set. And I think all the stories, especially in the first season, are really divided, and then slowly they're gonna do this. But we were separate worlds.
Yeah, I haven't spent much, I've been kind of tunnel visioned, in my own world, actually. And I mainly filmed, in and around London, and but we did shoot some reshoots in Vancouver, which we made look like London, which was amazing. But, yeah, I think all of the storylines are really powerful, and kind of... I'm just prouder to be a part of a show that is so global and is so diverse. I think they're all cracking.
And for example, just to show you how closed I was, I did all my scenes in one building in London, in Senate House. I don't know if you know. So all the scenes were inside that building. So I never saw anything outside the building.
I would like to think that I would use it, kind of in self-defense, and it would mean that I can go for walks at night on my own and not be afraid, and I could go jogging with. I think there was a character in the show that says she can go jogging with two 2 headphones in her ears and not be worried about, what might happen to her. So I like to think that I would use it for self-defense.
I feel the same way. I think there's the character is Joss in episode 5 who gives a monologue about the fear we take for granted as women that we just live under all of the time. That is just low-level fear. When I leave my house, I want to make sure that, I'm not going to walk down a dark street, that I'm not going to put myself in a dangerous situation. If I'm talking to a person, do I feel like they could do me harm? It's instincts that we get taught even as young children because we need them in order to survive. But we live under a constant state of alert. And I think it would be amazing to not carry that in my body every day, all the time. If I could let that go, what would it feel like to just have a sense of confidence and strength and not be afraid? But I'm not a very violent person, so I can't actually imagine. I would not use it to hurt anybody. I would be charging my phone with it and, lighting, the stove with it and silly things.
With me, I think it's a little bit different because I grew up in Croatia, where there's no fear of walking and running through the night or whatever. And when I'm not working, I live on one Croatian island in a village that is like 500 people, I think. So, and the reason I'm not thinking about what will I do with the power, because since the moment I was able to walk, not even talk, I was taking all the power I needed. And I was never, I was never restricted. I was never, you can't do this, you can't go there, you can't say this. Never, ever in my life. And later, when I became an actress, or even when I was studying, whenever I felt any kind of abuse, I was loud. I said something, I left. So I was always fighting for myself since I was like this. So I don't feel the need that I need the power. And I think again, being an artist, I think you have a lot of power and a lot of responsibility with that. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
I'm very happy for you that has been your life experience.
But you know what? I think the world is so crazy that we live in right now. So I really try not to watch too much of news and not to read too many papers and just like live in my own little bubble, which
From a point of view of a scriptwriter, that's not really an experience that we have. Intimacy coordinators deal with the cast and are there to help them be comfortable. I typically trust those people to do their job, and I don't have a tremendous amount of interaction with them.
It was my first time working with an intimacy coordinator, and I think we did a few exercises about consent. And, where we would ask, we did an exercise where we asked, can I touch you on your shoulder? Yes. And then we do it. And can I touch you on your stomach? No. And things like that. And to be honest, it made me just feel like more, I've literally just met this actor who's in front of me. So it made me feel like more connected, like I knew him a bit more. And you just establish those boundaries. And for me, like it was a good experience.
I had some experience before, so it wasn't something new, but it definitely changed since Me Too and all this started for the better, and it's really protective. But also Sister Global Production are really like super protective, not just of women, like of the whole atmosphere and the situation on the set. So like all 5 stars. To everybody.
I don't think it's actually about girl power. I think it's about power itself, and I think it's about historically marginalized people acquiring power. But, you know, this was an adaptation of a novel that Naomi Alderman wrote. And so she would be able to speak better to the origins of
But you could have adapted it anyway, is what I mean. Like, it could have been black people, it could have been gay people, it could have been anything, but, you know.
I guess you could take the novel and turn it into something else. But the job I was here to do was to adapt the novel that was. And that, to me, is less of an exploration of gender itself and more an exploration of power itself. I think part of the thrill of the show is watching people who haven't had power acquire that power, the journey that they've gone through to get to the place that they have the power, and to see what they do with it, both positive and negative, to see how power affects men and women. Just because the organ is emerging in teenage girls and then later transferred to women, it also impacts the men in their lives. We have really strong male characters on the show that have their own arcs that aren't about acquiring power. It's about how they are having to live in a world that has changed for them emotionally and politically and spiritually and physically. So I don't think it's just about girl power. I think it's a much broader world that we're talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But just to add a little something for me, like personally,
Please.
like the main question for me of the series, of the book, of the script, is basically probably for me, the first question that I asked myself in my life. In every level of life, personal, professional, whatever, do you want to be a passive viewer or an active member of the game called life? That's it. And I think that's the topic question.